Well, we are going to go ahead and get started with the afternoon sessions. And we are very lucky to have Laura Brown, who is from the Tennessee Alliance for Legal Services. She travels on our roadshow all the time. We are so grateful for her. But she is going to present about legal issues and some of that legal documentation that we talked about earlier. She typically gets through her presentation pretty fast and typically has a couple questions. So I'll come around if you have questions at the end. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon. So good to see everyone. I'm sorry I'm right after lunch, but it's great to see everyone. Give me just 1 second to get all this stuff down. There we go. I don't know why I bring so much stuff with me. As Christy said, my name is Laura Brown, and I work for something called the Tennessee Alliance for Legal Services, which I know is the longest name for an organization ever. So we go by the abbreviation TALS, T-A-L-S. And what we do is we are an organization that was formed in 1977, and we are designed to support the legal aids. We don't accept federal money from the Legal Services Corporation, so it means I don't have to abide by any of the regulations that come with the federal money, right? It's great and wonderful for the legal aids to be able to serve people and to be able to do what they do with the funds that they receive, but it's also really nice to be in a position where you don't have to accept that funding and you can serve all comers, right? In the 70s and 80s, there were lots of changes that were being made to how Legal Services Corporation funds could be used. Legal aids could no longer do class actions, and they could no longer help justice-involved individuals. And to provide services, folks needed to be U.S. citizens. Well, we can help any population in the state of Tennessee that needs legal help. Okay, so that gives us a little more flexibility and freedom. I will tell you that we operate a helpline and a couple of other projects, and over 95% of our callers are low-income Tennesseans, but we don't income test or charge for our services, so we don't ask folks about their income, you know, those kind of invasive questions that the legal aids have to ask just because of their funding. Before I get started, I do want to say one quick note. I have to give this disclaimer. I am an attorney. I promise attorneys are people too. So I have to give this little disclaimer that says, you know, this is not legal advice. This is for educational purposes only. If you have any specific legal questions, let's address those to a licensed Tennessee attorney. I happen to be one, so catch me after the presentation, and I'm always happy to go into more detail with folks. Throughout the presentation, I am very happy to address any general questions you may have. But if we're wanting to talk about maybe your cousin's aunt's sister's brother, we should probably do that, you know, after the presentation, because they just for the sake of time. Okay? If I talk too fast, tell me to slow down. I grew up in Pennsylvania, sorry, and learned to talk fast. Yes, slow down. I've been in Tennessee since 1996, but I haven't slowed that rate of speech down a little bit. All right, I'll slow down. Just wanted to let you guys know, as I mentioned, I am an attorney. The population over age 60 in the state of Tennessee is one that is near and dear to my heart. I've worked for a number of different organizations, including the state of Tennessee. I worked for what used to be called the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability as both the long-term care ombudsman for a number of years, and then switched over to working as the general counsel for that organization. So worked statewide on many different aging issues, worked and enjoyed my time there, and then moved over to work for a legal aid organization, and now I work for a smaller legal organization that helps everyone across the state of Tennessee who needs legal assistance. Our mission, just so you know it, is to strengthen the delivery of civil legal help to vulnerable Tennesseans, and that's what we do every single day at TALS. Just a quick overview of our presentation. We're going to talk about some legal issues that arise as we tend to age, right? And I know the purpose of the presentation is for those 60 and over, but what I'm going to talk about, the documents that we should have and the things that we should think about, need to start when we're at age 18, when someone is officially an adult, and then they have everything in place for when they're 60 and over, right? It's really conversations and things that we're going to talk about are difficult and can be difficult to have and hard to have with loved ones and family members. But if we sort of normalize those conversations around advanced care plans, right, and our wishes for what we want to happen to us medically when we can't make a decision, that makes it less taboo, right? We all know, unfortunately, two certainties in life, right? Taxes, April 15th, will always come around. And then death. Like, that is part of what we know is at the end of a life well lived, right? So what I'm going to talk to everybody about today are just some documents to have in place so that your wishes, your desires are carried out when you aren't here any longer in the case of a will, or when you can't make those decisions in the case of powers of attorney and advanced care plan documents. So our goal is to provide information on resources that exist across the state, and also at the end I'll kind of let you know what I can do and how I can be of assistance. The first document in the set of 3 that I always recommend that folks have is a will. Now, the will is a document that says, in its simplest terms, this is what I want to happen to my stuff, the things that I own, after I'm not here, right? A will was only important after, I have departed this earth and somebody has to figure out what to do with her house and all of those 500 cross-stitching projects that she has that were never finished, right? So that is what a will does. So in that will, I can say, if I wanted to, I am going to give those 500 cross-stitching projects that I've never finished, they're all in half done or less, I'm going to give them to, my friend, Betty. Or I can say, I have a house. I want my 3 children to split it. I only have one, but, for sake of example here. So it's where we set out our wishes for our stuff in a will. And I know I always get the question about a trust. Is a trust a way to do that as well? And I always tell folks, yes, a trust is a way to set out what you want to happen with your stuff after you're not here. But that is beyond the scope of, what TALs and what I usually do. What we do are very simple, straightforward wills. Someone has a house and a car and a salt and pepper shaker collection, right? We are your people, and we can help you with that pretty straightforward will. If you own property in Florida, first, I'm very sorry, and I hope it's still there after tomorrow. But if you own property in Florida as well as Tennessee, this is probably not, the wills that TALs can do for folks are probably not the will that you want to do. You might want to seek out a licensed attorney who has a little bit more experience and a little more expertise in elder law. And you might want to set up a trust when we start talking about different properties that we're owning in different states and those types of things. The reason TALs doesn't get into the trust business is manyfold. But one big thing is people set up trusts all the time, and they forget to follow the steps to ensure that all of the items, all of the titled property, is placed appropriately in the trust. If things aren't placed appropriately in the trust, it can be worse than not having the trust at all and not having a will, okay? So there's a lot of things that have to be followed after that trust is formed that people tend to forget. You've got to change deeds, and you've got to change titles, and all kinds of things, all these administrative details that take a long time. With a will, you can answer some simple questions that myself or one of our volunteer attorneys would ask you. We have a questionnaire, and it will spit that will out, and it'll tell folks this is who you want as your executor, and this is what you want to happen to your real property, and this is what you want to happen to your personal property. And we can set that up any which way that someone may want, okay? Tennessee does recognize both an attested will and a holographic will. What I'm talking about, if TALs does a will, and we did 20 of them at a library in Nashville on Saturday. I had 6 volunteer attorneys, I had 5 stations set up, and we just had folks coming through every 30 minutes, and we were working on wills, powers of attorney, and advanced care plans, right? So we did over 20 wills that day. That will is what's called an attested will, right? That's a Word documented document that is then signed by 2 witnesses and then notarized. So when our clients left on Saturday, they left with an attested will that told everyone what they wanted to happen to their stuff, and it was witnessed by 2 people, and then it was also notarized. We had notaries there as well. A holographic will is a will that is written entirely in your hand. Okay, so a holographic will is absolutely recognized in the state of Tennessee, but it does need to be entirely in your handwriting and then signed and dated. I've had lots of questions about, can people challenge that? I will tell you, from my perspective, I was a litigator for a number of years before moving over into public interest law. People can challenge anything, right? So there's never a guarantee that if a will is attested, it is that word documented document that's notarized, or if it's a holographic will, there's no guarantee that someone might not challenge it, okay? But I'm just letting everybody know, holographic wills, completely recognized in the state of Tennessee, must be entirely in your handwriting, and I would definitely, I believe the statute says you need to sign and date it as well. So any questions so far about wills? Those are pretty basic. Folks kind of know about them. Very important, though, because if you don't have a will, and then we get this question all the time, like, what happens if somebody passes away without a will? Well, it's called passing away intestate without a will. And what happens then is the state of Tennessee will go to the statute, which then says how property is to be distributed. So if you don't want your property distributed according to the statute, like if you have something else in mind, you might, the will is the way to go, okay? Yes, ma'am. Go back to the same attorney or another attorney to update the trust. Okay, if it's in a different state, I would always recommend someone in this state, like if you're in Tennessee or, you know what I'm saying, like you're maybe in Mississippi and the trust was done in Arkansas, is having an attorney in the area you live take a look at that, just to make sure it's legally sufficient for the state you're currently living in, and that everything is, you know, everything is straight and it's all good and it's up to date. And that's a good time to update as well. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So when we go to probate, it depends. I'm sorry, the question was, when is a will probated? And I'm going to give the great attorney answer is that it depends. I know, right? Yes, thank you. Generally, estates go through probate in order to change titles. So say that there's a house, you got to change the name on the deed. Those types of reasons, that's just one of the big ones we see, right? If you say, I pass away and my children want to sell the house, they can't sell it if the deed is in my name, right? So it would have to go to probate, change the names on the deeds, and then the children would be able to sell the home. One thing I want to mention, because we've had so many natural disasters, and TALS does a lot of work around natural disasters, is we are seeing more and more issues with deeds. We had one situation where mom and daughter lived in the house together. Daughter took care of mom. Mom passed away in 2009. That was 15 years ago. Daughter never probated the estate because the house was paid off. She just kept paying the taxes. So, you know what I'm saying? Things just rocked along. Up till there was a flood. And until the insurance was in mom's name, and mom had passed away 15 years ago. And the insurance was trying to write a check to repair the home to a person who had passed away 15 years ago. So you can see the problem. The check could not be cashed. The check could not be deposited. The check was just not valid. It was not able to be negotiated. So we came in, we helped her change the deed really quickly and get all of that straightened out and corrected, and then she was able to get the insurance check. But it delayed the repair of the house a good 3 to 4 months because she hadn't gone through the probate process to change the name on the deed. Yeah. Generally, no, but you need to make absolutely sure how that property is held, like how it's owned. In Tennessee, married couples generally own deeded property as joint tenants with the rights of survivorship, which means each of you own 100%. One passes away, 100% of it is yours. However, there are different ways for married couples to hold property. So I can't just say, just because you were married, that that's automatically true. So I would just have someone look at the deed, see how it's deeded, see what it looks like, and make absolutely sure that that's the way the property is held. Generally, yes, generally it doesn't have to go through probate unless there are other things and other issues to contend with. Okay? All right. So that's a little bit about wills. Anything else? Great questions. Yes, sir. So that's a great question. There are ways to pass property on before I pass away. Quitclaim deeds, all kinds of things that can be used and done. So that's a specific conversation that someone would need to have with an attorney. Like, how can I pass this property to my children without them having to go to probate? There are things that can be done. Trusts are one of the ways to do it. A quitclaim deed to your children with reserving a life estate for yourself, that's a way to do it. Through a will, though, there's no way to will a house to someone and to have them avoid probate just by a straight, simple will. There's not really. There are other ways to do it, but just not through this conveyance, this particular. There absolutely are. And then another thing to think about, too, if you're talking about giving a house, we're going to just use the house example, to a child, let's use that example. If you are concerned about at any point in time qualifying for Medicaid, you would need to have given or quitclaim deeded that house to that child at least 5 years prior to needing that Medicaid assistance, okay? This is only Medicaid. This is not Medicare. Big difference. So Medicaid is choices, and that's what can pay for long-term care, like in a nursing home, a long-term facility. Yes, ma'am. You should be good. Now, I have not read the document, but just what you're telling me, through your will, you're conveying that to your sister. I would make absolutely sure with your insurance policy, because that's what it sounds like to pay off the house, make sure that that's set up properly, it's going to pay off the house and all that. Just confirm those details in the policy. Yep. But that's an example. If she didn't have a will, the house wouldn't necessarily go to her sister, because under the eyes of the law, her sister may or may not be her next of kin. Okay? It could be a spouse, it could be a child, it could be parents. It just depends. But she made a decision. She wanted to give it to her sister. We used a will to do that. Okay. So yes, ma'am. No, the will doesn't transfer the deed or change the names on the deed. It just gives the property to someone that you named. So the question was, if I have a will and I give the property to my child, do I still have to go to probate to change the names on the deeds? Yes. You're just giving them the property through the vehicle of the will. In this situation where we're giving it to our sister, the sister would still have to probate the will in order to change the name on the deed from your name to her name. You could, but you need, again, this is a very serious thing to consider, because you would be giving her property rights now, okay? So you just want to make sure, like, sometimes siblings have fallings out. I know I have 2 brothers, right? Sometimes we talk and sometimes we don't. I would never put them on the deed to my house just because, I don't know, right? So in a lot of cases, it's a safe and good thing to do, but just know, your family's dynamics and circumstances before you do that, because it is serious. You're granting her property rights. Yep. Yeah, so take a look. I would definitely seek out an attorney's advice on that specific issue. Okay. Oh, did we lose the PowerPoint? We did. Yay! There we go. Okay, let's talk about powers of attorney. So we've talked about our stuff. The reason we have powers of attorney documents is so that I can name someone to step into my place and make decisions for me when I can't make those decisions myself. Okay? In Tennessee, we recognize a power of attorney for finances, and that's a separate document that comes with what I like to call this black box warning. That says you can only use this in the best interest of the principal, which would be me. It has all of these warnings to keep people from abusing that financial power of attorney, right? And when people always ask me, who should I pick to be my agent, I say you have to think about that decision very carefully and pick someone you trust implicitly to step into your place and make financial decisions for you. One thing to know, let's talk about powers of attorney. A power of attorney for healthcare or finances is completely revocable as long as you have capacity and understand what you're doing. So if you name someone and that later turns out to be a very bad choice, you can just say, that person's no longer my power of attorney, put that in writing, give it to that person, tell your bank, and that power of attorney is canceled. Okay? Also, just keep this in mind. The latest in time documents will always control. So if you execute 2 powers of attorney for finances, say you do it 10 years apart, that document with the latest date is going to be the one that the court looks at and that everyone else looks at if there's ever a question about which document to follow. Okay? So 1 for finances. Who can execute this? Anybody over the age of 18 in the state of Tennessee can name somebody else to make financial decisions for them if they're unable to make those decisions. Just know that I have to have capacity in order to enter into any of these documents. And what that means is I, as an individual, have to understand the rights that I am giving away through a power of attorney document, right? And my attorney or whoever's helping me with this has to believe I understand what I'm doing and the rights I'm giving away. There was a situation on Saturday where we had an individual who had a diagnosis of dementia. A diagnosis of dementia is not a complete and absolute bar to not having capacity. This individual had capacity. So we were able to help them with their power of attorney document. So I just try to stress that to people, and I was stressing that to my attorneys on Saturday, that just because he has a diagnosis of dementia doesn't mean that he can't enter into this document. If we believe he understands what he's doing, the rights he's giving away, all of those things, then he can still execute this document. I would cancel that person and kick them out. I'd kick them out of that document. So then we get to kind of the he said, she said, right? And I've been in situations when I was at the state where I had someone who appeared to be competent but who was not, trying to cancel a power of attorney for healthcare in this situation, because the power of attorney for healthcare was trying to get them to take their medications and to be compliant with medical care, and the individual just did not understand what that meant or why we were doing this. I knew the person didn't have capacity just from talking to them. The nursing home ran their mini mental tests, and the results came back that that person was not oriented to time and place and didn't have capacity. So it gets into a very, very tricky situation. They're very fact specific, and one that we have to talk about and look at on an individual basis. If you have capacity and someone is inappropriately using a power of attorney for healthcare, you need to immediately cancel that power of attorney for healthcare. remove that person from being your agent in fact, and then execute a new one with a new agent in fact. No, it's usually the reverse. It usually takes 2 or 3 doctors to say that you don't have capacity. So usually it's the reverse of that. All right. So again, there's all these warnings on a financial power of attorney that they can only be used, that the agent can only act in the best interest of the principal, which is me, the person executing the document. But we know sometimes bad things happen and there are bad actors. So make sure if you're going to pick somebody to be your agent under a financial power of attorney, you pick someone who's uber trustworthy, right, that you would trust no matter what and implicitly trust. There is a power of attorney for health care. It's a broad document, and we're going to talk about an advanced care plan here in just a moment. The power of attorney for health care is broader than the powers granted under an advanced care plan. So you could have a power of attorney for health care if you wanted to. I have in-laws who are getting into their 80s, and they do, because it would allow myself or their son, my husband, to go to the doctor with them and to see medical records, things that might be important as they continue to age. But it's a little broader than the powers granted under advanced care plan. So 2 of them in the state of Tennessee. Definitely recommend them. Even though I know financial power attorneys can be abused, pick someone trustworthy and go forward with that, okay? And also another note is if you have capacity and you're able to make your own financial decisions, the person you pick as your agent really shouldn't be interfering and making financial decisions for you, right? They should only be stepping in when you need some help and support and assistance. So keep that in mind as well. Like my husband is the financial power of attorney for his parents. They don't need any help. They are totally good, totally competent, totally able to do their own thing, so they're doing their own thing, right? We just have these documents in a safe for when we do need them, right? Hopefully we won't, but if we do, they're there. An advance directive is a document that we recommend, again, that every single person has, because it's a way to set out your wishes, for me to set out my wishes for what I want to happen to me when I get to the end of my life and I am not able to make those decisions regarding my end-of-life medical care, okay? So it's just setting out my preferences. What kind of treatment do I want? Do I want all the treatment in the world? Do I want CPR? You know, it asks you a series of questions. You can respond to the questions and just set out your wishes. What do you want to happen? End of life, I can't make these decisions for myself, but I can now, today, because I have capacity and I'm able to talk through those decisions. Just know, yes ma'am, okay, and I see lots of questions. All right, we'll go here and then here, yes. Tennessee does not recognize living wills any longer. 2007? So, so no more living wills in the state of Tennessee. If you have one that was penned then, when there was a statute that had a living will, it's still accepted and doctors still follow them. But now we have something called an advanced directive, advanced care plan. It's a form, and I'll go to the form. It looks sort of like this. It's a little cut off. Sorry about that. There is a form from the Department of Health. Anybody can access it on the website at any point in time. You can download it. It's a 2-page document. It doesn't have to be notarized, and you don't need an attorney to help you with it. You can answer the questions. You can sign it, have 2 witnesses, or have it notarized, and you're good to go. Yes, ma'am. They should work together because your power of attorney for healthcare is broader, and it generally it doesn't usually set forth my wishes for end-of-life care, but it says I authorize my agent, my daughter, to go to the doctor with me, to get my medical records, to pay my bills for the medical care. Yes, sir. Yep. A power of attorney. That is the form that the state has. Okay, so I have exactly 1 minute left. So I never recommend that we download any forms online from like legaldoc.com and those kinds of things. Those are going to be the documents that are written by attorneys sitting in California that they say are compliant with Tennessee law, and they generally aren't. This is a form that was created here in the state of Tennessee for Tennesseans, and it is completely free on the Tennessee Department of Health website. If you just go in and type in Advanced Care Plan, Department of Health, Tennessee, this will be the first thing that pops up. You're welcome. All right, and why do we have these powers of attorney documents? Because we're trying to avoid conservatorship. I can tell you story after story after story, heartbreaking story after story after story of individuals who did not have a power of attorney for health care or an advanced care directive, and they needed someone to make health care decisions for them. They didn't have capacity, so we could not enter into these documents, and we had to go the conservatorship route, which is a court process that removes all rights from an individual and gives them to someone else. It's lengthy, it's dehumanizing, it's expensive, and it's something you really don't want your loved ones to have to go through. All right, and it is exactly 1:15. I will be around here for a little bit. I will put my contact info up. If you need to, there's my email address. It's just lbrown@tals.org. I do answer my email. I do receive hundreds of them a day, so it sometimes takes me a minute, but I do get back to emails. And I do come to senior centers. I do come to churches and do an educational presentation that usually lasts about an hour, and then we come back later and we can do wills and powers of attorney. You can, yep. Tals.org is the website you want. TALS.org is where you can find the connection to the other legal aids and then also for us. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
And just remember, we will have the PowerPoints linked for you in both digital form, and then we'll give a mail out as well, as long as we have a good address for you. So you will have all of that information. Before we go to a quick break, I wanted to introduce to you the ladies, if y'all come up, that are have their tables set out in the hall. And I feel so strongly about the resources that they had to offer. I wanted to make sure you each got an opportunity to hear from them. So first, I'll let Rachel go. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Salava. I serve as the outreach manager with the Greater Nashville Regional Council, or GNRC. We all have very long names, so we like to use acronyms in the aging space. And we are designated as the area agency on aging and disability for 13 counties in northern Middle Tennessee, including Montgomery, Stewart, Houston, Humphreys, Davidson, Rutherford. I can give you a map. I can also direct you to the other 8 AAADs across the state of Tennessee, or even another area agency on aging in another state if you have loved ones. So we are a resource center. That's what you need to know. We have a free helpline that's open and available to all community members, so we receive both state and federal funds to help older adults age in place. And that just means stay in your home as long, as safely as possible. So we help provide in-home care service. We can answer your questions. How do I get signed up for Meals on Wheels? Or, you know, I'm caring for my loved one in my home. What resources exist for me? Well, we can offer reimbursement for respite. We have lots of brochures. I'd love to get into details with y'all. We are also, one of our programs is called SHIP, State Health Insurance Assistance Program, and this is free, unbiased, non-commissioned Medicare information and counseling. So you know that Medicare open enrollment is starting October 15th. I'm sure you're being inundated already with those TV ads, your mailers. Exactly. And so we just want to educate our community about what plans exist and make sure that you feel empowered to make the best choice for you or a loved one in your healthcare decisions. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Paula. Can y'all hear me? I'm Paula Daigle. I'm with Age Well Middle Tennessee. We're a local nonprofit based in Nashville, but we serve the same 13 counties as GNRC. And we are also an information resource. We publish a book called The Directory of Services. It's kind of like the Yellow Pages, and I know you guys still know what the Yellow Pages are. For older adults and family caregivers, it's got everything from activities to housing to legal issue. You'll find TALS's information in there. It's a great resource. We also, as Laura was talking about end of life, we have a great book called Preparing and Planning, and it's just kind of getting you thinking through what you need to think about, kind of getting your affairs in order. There's some charts where you can list things out. So that is another resource I have at the table as well. But we're available to help answer questions for family caregivers. We have a new program called Elder Care Coach for anyone that's caring for a loved one. you can give us a call. We have a geriatric social worker on staff that can help you chart a path on how to care for your loved one. So we are here as another resource as well. And Dr. Rick Gensler is a former board president for us as well. And Miss Linda Rudolph up front is going to be, we have the SAGE Awards, which honor older adults in our community on October 21st. And Miss Linda is going to be one of our honorees. So we're excited. So thanks for guys.
Good afternoon. I am Allison Ashmore, and I have a very different purpose for being here than most of these folks. I am the retreat director at Beersheba Springs Assembly, which is one of our United Methodist assemblies owned by this conference, the Tennessee Western Kentucky Conference that this congregation is a part of. And we just wanted to be here. I was at the event last fall to support everything that Encore Ministry is doing, and also just to keep you informed of the ways that Beersheba Assembly is making things more accessible. A lot of times when people think about camp, or if you went to camp at Beersheba when you were younger, things have changed a lot if you haven't been there in a long time. We have been getting grants from Encore that have been helping to make the assembly more accessible. We have a lot of hotel-style rooms, and we have a lot of accessible rooms, and we have just wonderful programming. I came from a camp that did summer camp and all these things, and Beersheba is just a wonderful place for adults. We love kids as well, but not a lot of our camps and conference centers are very accessible and really cater to more adults. And you are very fortunate, we are very fortunate in this conference to have a place like that. Plus, it's kind of beautiful up on the mountain, especially this time of year. But one of the things, I do have a table that's telling you about some of the things we're offering, but one of the things that not a lot of people know is that we allow people just to come and rent a room, just like if you were going to go and stay at a hotel. And so just give us a call. We have per room rates that you can come and do a personal retreat, as we call them. So if you just want to come up and spend a couple of days at the assembly on the beautiful mountain there in the Cumberland Plateau, then we would love to have you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Blanchard. I'm the regional director for Alzheimer's Tennessee, and I'll have the pleasure of speaking with you in the next few minutes here. But Alzheimer's Tennessee, we're a statewide nonprofit organization, and we provide a number of services to both families that are caring for someone with a diagnosis, for people who are just wondering if their brain is healthy or if they need to be concerned. Also for churches, and I have something I'll be giving to this church today through our Helping Hands program. We provide training and resources to assisted living, memory care, provide support groups for families that are caregivers. And the favorite part of my job is that anytime a family caregiver calls in to us in Middle Tennessee, and I cover 16 counties in Middle Tennessee, when you dial that Alzheimer's Tennessee number, I'm going to answer that call directly. So I'm a dementia care specialist, so that means you're in good hands. I'll walk you through what's going on, help get you connected to resources, and guide you and your family along the way. We also have services for folks with a diagnosis. So if you know someone who's recently diagnosed, we have a support group where they can all come together and share, as well as our Memory Cafe meetings where they can gather together with other people with a diagnosis. If you are caring for someone with a diagnosis, this afternoon I'm going to talk to you about the Silver Alert program. How many of you guys see those come across your phones and things? Okay. So we encourage you to really pay attention to those when you see them. Our Silver Alert kits are available to any family caregiver to help you be prepared in the event that your loved one wanders. I'll tell you more about that in a minute, but during this break, if you are a caregiver and would like to receive a free kit, I did bring some with me. So I have a big purple tablecloth out there. Just come stop by and we'll get you set up.
Thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate it. So make sure, So make sure during this break you all stop by and get their resources, and we will take about a 10-minute break. We'll come back and we'll be finished up with our last session, and I'm excited about it. Also, just a reminder, this is kind of a last call for food. There's tons of snacks back there that have been set out since lunch, so feel free to help yourself to snacks and drinks. All right, everyone, let's join back together. We have two very important presentations, both short, and they're going to give you a sense of this last session, which is about protecting yourself and those you love. So it's really important, especially when we think about what our friends in Florida are going through today, what our friends in Western North Carolina and East Tennessee have been through over the past week. This is really a timely presentation and a timely opportunity to become prepared, better prepared for ourselves and to help the people that we know and love be prepared. So I've been excited about this for a while now. I want to introduce Cheryl Blanchard, who you just met. She has a table out in the hallway. She is from Alzheimer's Tennessee, which differs from the Alzheimer's Association. They're different, but both have amazing programs and qualities. So one thing that is unique to Alzheimer's Tennessee is they actually helped bring the legislation to Tennessee, get the legislation through our government officials, sign bill into law to have the Silver Alert program. So it is, and she's going to tell you all about it. I can't really do it justice. But thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. Hello again. Okay, perfect. Fantastic. I like to walk and talk, so I will click away. All right, so I'm excited to share about the Silver Alert with you, and you're right, Christy, and the one thing about that is we did that in a COVID year. So we were really proud of that. We got this legislation passed in 2021. One of the things that Alzheimer's Tennessee does on a regular basis is we do go up to the Capitol every year on behalf of people with this diagnosis. We share with them the family's needs, their concerns, legislation that we need, and we were really excited to get this passed. So I do want to tell you a little bit more. And first of all, I want to talk about why we're so concerned about wandering. And that's because 6 out of 10 people with a diagnosis will wander at some point. 6 out of 10. That's a lot of people when you think about it. And so oftentimes I'm talking with a family and they'll say, oh, yeah, well, you know, my dad's never wandered. And I kind of silently add the word yet to the end of that sentence, because just because they haven't wandered yet doesn't mean they won't. And so we really want to help families be prepared in the event that their loved one does wander. It's a terrifying thing. I lead a lot of support groups. I speak to a lot of family members, and it's amazing when I get a phone call from someone and they tell me my husband wandered away. It's just sheer terror. So we're happy to have this program in place. One thing that people don't think about sometimes is why a loved one wanders. You know, I mentioned they say, well, he hasn't wandered, and I say yet, kind of silently. But they don't understand all the reasons why people do wander. So just to share a few of those reasons with you, when a person is diagnosed with Alzheimer's or one of the other dementias, one of the parts of the brain that's impacted is their problem-solving abilities, their ability to backtrack. So think about it, and I know all hands are going to go up, but you ever walk into a room, forget why you went in there? Yeah. Forget where you parked your car in the parking lot at Walmart? Yeah, me too. But what you can do is backtrack. You can retrace your steps. You can think about it. I drove over here from Murfreesboro today. I still have no idea where I'm at, somewhere near Kentucky. A lady was explaining to me earlier. But, you know, there were detours. My GPS redirected me a couple of times around wrecks and things like that. I could follow that. The person with dementia can't backtrack. If they get lost driving, they can't go back and go, oh, that's right, I turned right, but I was supposed to have turned left. Or think about right now with all of the flooding and everything that's happened in our area, those people are used to landmarks. If you always know you turn by this beautiful church, you always turn right by this church. Well, what if this church was suddenly gone? So sometimes when they're trying to navigate, they're thinking about what the town looked like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, or maybe they're thinking about the city they grew up in. So they get turned around. They get really confused when they're out trying to drive or even walking. Sometimes they're trying to get to a place they used to go, like their job or their school or their old house. So one of the reasons we have the Silver Alert kit, part of it talks about their previous address, because sometimes a person will say they're trying to get home, and you look at their driver's license and it says Clarksville, Tennessee, but you say, well, where's home? And they give you an address from Birmingham, Alabama. Why? because they're trying to go to a home from 40 or 50 years ago. So it's important that law enforcement officers have that information so they can try to understand a little more about what's going on. So going to that previous home is one of the things, or following an old routine. One thing that happens, too, that people don't think about is that when someone has Alzheimer's disease, their understanding of the passage of time is very, very different than yours. So what might be 10 minutes to you can feel like 5 hours. So what happens sometimes is a loved one runs to the store, and they forget that they can't just tell the person and they're going to remember it. Honey, stay right here. I've got to run to the store and just get bread and milk. I'll be back in 20 minutes. You could say that to one of us, right? And that would make sense. They leave, go to the store. The person with Alzheimer's sits there, and it feels like an eternity since their loved one left. So they walk out the door and go looking for them, and they get lost. Same thing that happens if you say, honey, sit in the car. I'm going to run in, pick up a couple of things. I'll be right back. And again, that 5 or 10 minutes that they're gone to the person with Alzheimer's feels like a very long time. So they get out of the car and they go looking. And this has happened a number of times. These are actually cases that I've worked with personally, that this is how they got lost. So they lose track of time. The other thing that happens is sometimes they'll have a desire to go somewhere. Sometimes just seeing the car, even if they have nowhere to go, they'll want to get in the car and go somewhere. Or sometimes they are going somewhere, but along the way, they get distracted and they forget where they were going. But they don't forget that sense that they're supposed to be going somewhere. So even though they forget where they're going or why they're going, guess what? They keep going. You know how many states we touch? What is it, 8? I'm not from Tennessee, so I didn't take Tennessee geography. Do we touch about 8 states? So think about that. If somebody gets on any of the interstates around here and just keeps going, we find families in Alabama, in Georgia, in Arkansas, in Kentucky, all the time, because they just keep going. And sometimes the only reason they stop is because they run out of gas. And in one case I worked with, it was a sister. Her brother was in Nashville. She ended up almost to Alabama, ran out of gas. Somebody really kind helped her put gas in her car, got her on the interstate to send her home. Unfortunately, instead of headed back to Nashville, she kept going the wrong direction, and they found her in the middle of Alabama somewhere. And the second time she ran out of gas, somebody talking to her was recognizing something's not quite right here. And so they were able to get her brother's number, and they got her safely back home, right? So they just keep going. Or they get turned around. Now, a lot of times families say, well, it's fine. You know, he just drives local. Dad just drives to the store. He just drives to the church they've gone to for 40 years. And that sounds like it would make a difference, but it doesn't. Remember what I said about if one thing is different, they can get twisted around and they can't problem solve and retrace their steps. So think about road construction. What if a road is closed that you normally go on? Happened to me a week ago. I was going hiking at somewhere I go all the time. The main road was closed. I had to figure out how to get there another way. They can't do that. So those are some of the common reasons that people wonder, and I share that with families when they think, well, you know, my dad wouldn't do that, but he might. So the Silver Alert Law, what Christy was alluding to, took effect in July of 2021. And we're really excited that even during the time of COVID, we got that. If you get a silver alert come across your phone, you might notice that it's maybe somebody that's only 20 or 30 years old. So the way the law is actually worded, it's not only for seniors who have Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. It's for any adult, 18 or older, who for a cognitive or medical reason might not be able to find their way back home if they got lost. So you might see people with Down syndrome, right? And they might be 20 years old, but they couldn't. Or you might find people with other cognitive issues who couldn't. But instead of having a law and a color for everything, this just went for older adults. So that's why you'll see people that are younger. And there was always a missing person process, but what we found was it might be different in Clarksville than it was in Nashville, and that might be different than it was in Murfreesboro. So what the Silver Alert Law did was it combined processes. It kind of brought them together into a unified format, and then law enforcement works directly with the TBI to get that alert issued. So if you ever had a missing person, you would call your local law enforcement first. They would gather the information, and they would get it to the TBI, who actually issues the silver alert. And that's exactly what led into these kits being produced, because when law enforcement first started responding, they found that families didn't have all of the information that they needed to issue the alert. Anybody want to guess what the number one thing was that families did not have on hand? A recent photo. Yeah, it's a recent photograph. They didn't have one. And the TBI, that cannot be issued without a current photograph. That's vital information. Also, Dad drove off in his white truck. Well, what's the year, make, and model of the truck? I don't know. What's the tag number? We don't know. Do y'all know we have tag readers in this state, and that if somebody goes missing and we have that tag number, they can turn those on and find them even faster? Important information that you don't always think of. That's all in the kit, all right? And then those alerts are sent out. May is now Silver Alert Awareness Month in Tennessee, so if you're the first week, I think in May, they light the Capitol up purple for us, so that's a lot of fun to go see. And then these are the things that are in the kit. So it does show you, or it shows families how to get those current photos. It asks about that vehicle information. We took the TBI's missing person profile that already existed, and we added to it to be more beneficial for somebody who had Alzheimer's disease, like where they used to work, where they lived 30, 40 years ago, and things like that, places that they used to like to visit. Information about what to do if a loved one goes missing is included. We've got a complete checklist, because how many of us do our best work when we're in a crisis, right? When we're in crisis, it's hard to think. So we've mapped that all out for you. We've said, hey, if your loved one goes missing, here is step 1, step 2, step 3, and you just go down and check it off. So it makes it really easy for folks. That's what some of the contents look like that are in there. We also have a link to our safety catalog. And the products in that safety catalog, we've actually really taken a close look at. We didn't just do a Google search and throw it in there. We either know somebody that have used it, we've read the reviews, or we feel pretty confident that it would be helpful. So a lot of information about making the home safer and making your loved one safer is in there as well. Then we've also got tips to make the home safer, wandering prevention, signs that your loved one might wander. That's all in there too. So I want to share some statistics with you, because we're really, really proud of this program. These are just since June. That's the last time I spoke on the Silver Alert. But in 2024, as of June 12th, we had 57 issued. Unfortunately, 6 were found deceased. And look at that, 12 located in other states. That's why that vehicle information is so incredibly important, right? Overall, again, this is June. So from June 21 to June 24, we'd had 343 Silver Alerts issued. 26 were located deceased, 57 located out of Tennessee, and there were 9 active alerts at the beginning of June of this year. An alert is kept active until that person is located, whether they're located alive or deceased. They don't cancel that alert. We always hold out hope that we're going to bring these folks home. These are just some tips if a loved one is missing, that go ahead and search the local area. Sometimes they have found, one family found their mom. She thought she was a little girl playing hide and seek, and I kid you not, they found her under a bed. She was playing hide and seek and wouldn't answer, because you don't answer, right, when somebody calls you. So search the immediate area, notify your family and friends. I always advise families, I know this is a difficult diagnosis and you may not want everyone to know, but tell your closest neighbors, hey, if you see my husband walking down the road without me, please call me. I'm concerned he might get lost, and if you'll just call me and let me know. So let your neighbors know. Call local law enforcement, and the TBI wants you to know it's only on television that you have to wait 24 hours before you can call in a missing person. That is just on TV. If a person with dementia, Alzheimer's disease goes missing, they want you to call immediately. The sooner you can get law enforcement out there, the sooner this Silver Alert can be issued, the sooner we can start finding that person. And it's much safer to find them as quickly as possible. And also, if you've got some friends or loved ones around, you can check those places that they used to like to go. You can use the social media. You can use Facebook. You can do other things to notify people that your loved one is missing. So that's a way to get things out. If you have some of those GPS devices, sometimes you can use little tags on them. There are things you can put in shoes. I have Life 360 on my phone. My children are all adults, but we do Life 360, and I can peg them. I will say all of a sudden, what are you doing at a movie, and you didn't invite me, So you can go right to where they are. So Life 360, and you think about it, in the next few years, if not already, almost all of us walk out the door with keys and what other item? A phone, yeah. So if it's a smartphone, that is a phenomenal app that can help you locate a loved one if they go missing. And then also, please feel free to reach out to your office. Out on the table, we've got a listing of all of the Alzheimer's Tennessee offices. We've got 6 across the state, so there's one near you. Even talked to a couple of nice folks from Kentucky, so thank you for stopping by. But definitely reach out to us. If a loved one goes missing, we're happy to help guide you through those steps, make sure you're following that checklist, and do everything we can to keep you calm. That's a listing of our local offices. I think for most people in here, you would work with me. Middle Tennessee, and as I said earlier, I do cover 16 counties. So anything that we can do to support you guys, please don't hesitate to give us a call. And if I have a minute, Christy, does anybody have any questions about the Silver Alert or how that works? This is what it looks like. So it's in we've put it in a waterproof zippered pouch, so it's easy to grab and take with you if you travel. Yes, ma'am. Yes, thank you for asking. So the law is it's supposed to be called in within 4 hours. I have not heard of one police department that waits. They know it's urgent. But what was making them wait is not having all the information, which is why we have this. So if they didn't have that current photo, didn't know the car, didn't know information, they can issue it without that information. So yeah, but the law says 4 hours, but they don't wait. All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to invite our friends from AARP to come up so we can have our presentation from them. We're going to switch out equipment real quick. But in the meantime, while we do that, I wanted to take just a second to make sure that you've seen everything that was on your table. The first piece of information was this pretty Encore card that looks super special. Make sure that you read that and just answer the questions as you feel are appropriate for you. There's also a place for your information on the back should you want to share that. And then the other piece of information is a black and white copy which says event evaluation. This is super helpful to us. We actually have a combined meeting after our events, and we go through all these evaluations and try and make changes for our next events based on the feedback that we get from this event. So if you have the time, we'd love to hear from you about that. The next piece of information is a little busier piece of paper, and this says older adult ministry needs. These programs are things that our grant helps provide. So if you see something on here that looks interesting to you, please take a minute just to fill it out. We can always have conversations later, but just make sure your contact information is on there. And for all these sheets, if you'll just leave them on the table, we'll collect them at the end. Lastly, I don't remember Dr. Gensler mentioning this. He may have, but you've got tips for, he said, speaking of memory, so of my memory, because I can't remember if he did, tips for improving communication by church leaders with older adults. So this is free for you to take. It's one of his many publications. It's actually very useful. I've given it to my husband, who's an elder in our church, to take to the elders so they can have it as well. So it really is a useful tool. How are we doing? Okay. And you've got yours.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
All right. Okay.
Are you going to walk or?
I have a tendency to talk with my hands and move around and do all kinds of stuff.
Don't go far.
All right, I'm not going far and I'm not dancing. We ready?
So this is Miss Nancy Kendrick from AARP. She's going to help talk with us today about fraud and scams.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And before I get started, let me also introduce two of my co-workers and cohorts that are with me. I have Manuel McKnight, who is ACE #1 AV Tech person to support me, and April Ippolito, who is here, and we are all volunteers with AARP, and are going to talk today about the Fraud Watch Network. Now, my job today as a facilitator is going to be to talk and present some valuable information to you on this topic and hopefully help you avoid being a victim of any sort of fraud or scam. We are AARP volunteers and have had training on this topic, but we are not experts. So let me use that disclaimer up front. Now, some of you may be wondering, okay, why is AARP talking to us about this topic? Well, what you may not know is that AARP began more than 65 years ago, and our founder was a retired school principal, Dr. Ethel Percy Andrews. And she started AARP after discovering that one of her former teachers was living in a chicken coop. Dr. Andrews was so appalled that this woman who had worked her whole life couldn't even afford a place to live that she decided she needed to do something to help seniors protect the financial security, and that financial security was a basic need, a basic function for all older Americans. So fighting identity theft and fraud and scams became part of our core mission. So today, what we're going to talk about is some fraud tendencies. We're going to talk about something that we call the con artist playbook, talk about some prevention, practicing ways and strategies to avoid becoming a target. And a target is anyone who is a victim or is subjected to some sort of fraud or scam. And then some resources to help you not become a target. Most of you probably either know someone who has been approached with a fraudulent offer, or you yourself have been approached with an offer. You may know someone who's been a victim of identity theft or fraud. A lot of times this goes unnoticed because people are embarrassed to admit it has happened to them. But they shouldn't be. They're not alone. The top scams and fraud reported to the Federal Trade Commission typically involve identity theft and imposter scams. We're going to talk a little bit and go through some of the details of that briefly. Identity theft, for instance, is when someone steals your personal information, like your Social Security number, bank account information, personal details, and then use that to obtain and steal money. Identity fraud can be opening credit card accounts, draining your bank account, and setting up other avenues of debt all in your name. It's not surprising that identity theft is a multi-billion-dollar industry in the U.S. and that consumers and financial institutions lost $16.9 billion, with a B, dollars to identity fraud in 2019. That was a 15% increase over 2018. We've had similar increases ever since then. So these forms of theft and fraud take on various identities within themselves. So let's talk about some of them. The imposter scams involve someone pretending to be you and coercing you into giving them money. These criminals often impersonate federal government workers, sheriffs, tech support workers, even family and friends. And I know you all are thinking about the times that you get the phone call, "Hi, I'm so-and-so representing the local sheriff's department, and we're raising money for orphans and widows, etc. And for every $100 you give, you're going to get a decal to go on the back of your car that will prevent you from being stopped when you're speeding." Yeah, right. If that's the case, I got a bridge I can sell you. Another common imposter scam that seniors fall prey to is the grandparent scam. And this is the one where you get the frantic phone call from someone claiming to be making the call for a grandchild who's in trouble. They were riding in the car with a friend, they got pulled over, drugs were found, now they need bail money. Or your granddaughter's been in a car accident, the person in the other car was pregnant, has been rushed to the hospital, and is in critical condition, and now she's being charged with reckless endangerment and needs money right away to get out of trouble. Is this ringing a bell with anyone? Okay. The target is then told to wire money. Nowadays, it is through one of the many apps, Cash App, Zelle, etc., or purchase gift cards and then read the account number and the PIN off the back. I promise you, as soon as they hang up the phone, the scammer is gone and so is the money. So, what are some of the other common scams that are taking place? They involve investment fraud. Lottery scams are becoming more and more prevalent. And of course, the ever-present tech support scams that occur just about this time every year. So, meet another form of fraud that happens frequently that we're seeing now is investment fraud. Meet Steve. He's a 58-year-old graduate, 58-year-old gentleman with a graduate degree, made his living as a stockbroker. You would think people like this would not be targets, but they are. He lost $40,000 in an oil and gas investment scheme. A massive investment scam was uncovered in Washington State several years back, following a period where Bernie Madoff was arrested in New York for the biggest investment scheme on record. Over the course of several years, a gentleman named Darren Berg cheated hundreds of investors out of more than $100 million through the Meridian Group. And you may have heard about this in the news. Berg was eventually sent to prison, and as a result of him going to prison, one morning the guards were making rounds and found his cell empty. He's been on the run and missing since then, and so is the money that he took. Lottery scams are on the rise. This ruse tends to come about when people get excited because they've supposedly won huge amounts of money in sweepstakes, and the criminals string them along by asking for more and more payments to cover taxes and fees for them to collect the money. These processing fees don't exist because the lottery money doesn't exist. And it may be hard for us to understand how this can happen, but scammers are successful every day. Tech support scams are another all too common fraud that happens, and what generally starts it is the target gets a phone call from someone impersonating Microsoft or another tech company, and telling them that they've identified a virus remotely on the target's device. Now, they'll either ask for the target to purchase some sort of software to clear the virus or offer to clear it for a fee. The ultimate objective of this is to convince the target to allow them remote access into the device. And once they're in, they can search, they can find, they can access all of your information and then use it for ill-gotten gain. Tech support scams are among the most common, and now we are seeing them occur year-round. How is it that these scammers can be so successful in what they do? AARP was fortunate enough to come up with something that we call the Con Artist Playbook, and we did so by interviewing convicted felons and listening to hundreds of thousands of tapes from law enforcement that then allowed us to hone in on and figure out where the con artists were getting their information and their insights. So, I'd like for you to meet Jimmy, who is a well-known scammer and worked in more than 30 boiler rooms, as they are called, for an 8-year period. He's kind of infamous in that range of criminals because in an 8-year period, he supposedly got away with stealing $60 million. Now, in his interview that we had with him, he talked about how fraudsters are developing their skills and how they can be so successful. So we listened. And here's one of the things that we learned. Jimmy told us that it was easy to get people to part with their money once they became or were subject to the ether. Once they were under the ether, they could get them to do anything. Now, what is ether? You probably remember this from when you've had some medical procedure done. Ether for a con artist, ether is considered to be the heightened emotional state that makes it hard to think clearly and make rational decisions. That's why medical professionals tell you when you've been sedated or put into twilight to have something done, don't sign important documents, don't drive, don't make decisions, don't give away your money. These people are waiting to take it. The con artists believe that once they have a target under the ether, they can get them to do anything in that heightened emotional state. When Jimmy was interviewed, he said that it was not hard to get people to stop thinking logically and making those decisions rationally and take advantage of them. Now, there are other persuasion tactics that scammers use. We're going to talk briefly about those. There are the phantom riches, the lottery schemes that we already talked about, where the con artist dangles something in front of the target and makes them think that they're coming out ahead of everybody else, or that something that has little value today is going to be grossly overvalued soon, and they have to get on this investment vehicle now. There's also profiling, and this tends to be when the con artist gathers personal information just by chatting with the target, finds out things, how many children they have, they own their own home, free and clear. Oh, they hold investments with this firm or that. And once they know just a smidgen of information, they use it to their advantage to then find a way to get money away from the target and exploit their weaknesses. There's also the tactic of scarcity. Now, how many of you have seen the going out of business sale signs that last forever, or the one-day sale? And we've just come out of the pandemic where we were so afraid of running out of toilet paper and paper towels that when we found them on the shelf, we bought it, even though we may not necessarily have needed it or wanted it. Scammers use the very same tactic to make you think that you must take advantage of this offer today because it is not going to be available later. There's the source credibility methodology. And this is where they use a well-known celebrity. They appear to be very successful in their attire and their vehicles. They claim affiliation with reputable organizations and tout special credentials that they may have or experience in particular areas that make you want to listen and follow all of the instructions that they give you. One common source of credibility scams that we see more and more, people who say they formerly worked for the IRS and they have all this insider information. They're a Social Security expert or an expert in anything that allows them to seem more credible and let you part with your hard-earned dollars faster. There's the fear and intimidation tactic. I gave you the example earlier of the lottery scams. It is not uncommon for the scammer, when the target doesn't fall for the ruse, to then call them or contact them over and over and over and become threatening or try to intimidate them to send the money or the gift card information. And they can become very prolific with foul language during these calls. So what we want to do now is take a look at ways that you can spot or avoid these scammers and not become a target. The first thing that we want to remind you is never, ever, ever give your personal information to someone that you don't trust or that doesn't need it. Avoid making financial decisions in a heightened emotional state, whether it's medical ether or the scammer's ether. Do your research. Only donate to charities and causes that you trust, that you are familiar with, that you've researched, and that you know your money is going to the cause that you want. We are right now in a period with all of the disasters that are happening. I'm sure everybody's getting the phone calls and the text messages wanting you to donate to this, that, and the other. Do your homework. Be mindful that scammers have already researched and become very adept at using robocalls, emails, text messages, even social media to get you to part with your money. Develop a refusal script that says no, thank you very much, no, hang up, or don't answer the call. Let it go to voicemail or your answering machine and call back those people that you know are legitimate. I already said this, but I can't say it enough. only share your social security number and personal identifiers with people who need it. Shred sensitive information. We are still seeing identity theft and fraud occur because there are dumpster divers out there. Review your financial statements and make sure that you're not seeing anything fraudulent or suspicious. You can also please check your credit report. You are entitled to one free credit report every year from all 3 agencies. Take a look at it, make sure that there's nothing on there that is incorrect, and if it is, contact them immediately. Keep your electronic devices updated with anti-fraud, anti-theft, security software. When you get the notice that says there's been an update, activate it. Protect your passwords, don't share them. We definitely encourage you to use password managers, password account managers. I could do a whole nother talk on that. And then finally, AARP has the AARP Fraud Watch Network. You can access it by going online to aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork, all one word, and you do not have to be a member of AARP to avail yourself of any of the resources on our website. There's a toll-free number to use. And the website has multiple links that will help you access all of our programs and support systems. So, just in summary, we've talked about scams and fraud. We've talked about how AARP developed the Con Artist Playbook, talked a little bit about the persuasion tactics that we don't want you to fall prey to, and hopefully some tips and resources to avoid you falling prey and becoming a target. We apologize profusely for not having some of the resource material available for you today in print. Our shipment got sent somewhere, hijacked through some means. Yeah, it got hijacked somewhere, somehow, but as I said, it's all online. Please avail yourself of it. And we'll be around for a little while if you have questions. Thank you so much for your attention.
Yes, so that is part of what we hope to be able to ship out to you in the coming weeks as well. So we're excited about being able to offer some of those booklets. They're helpful, and I know there will be some stuff on caregiving and things like that as well. So the last thing we're going to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about packing a go bag, and then Dr. Gensler is going to offer a couple closing remarks. On your table, you have a host a go bag packing party. One of the things that we want to make sure that we do is to be prepared. And I will tell you a story about Easter, probably 2021. Easter night, Chattanooga had a massive, massive tornado. That tornado tore through all sorts of neighborhoods, but unfortunately, it also hit several of our assisted living and memory facilities. And those people had to be evacuated in the middle of the night during a powerful storm. And so it really just reiterated to all of us as providers that we need to make sure that we make plans for all of this. A go bag is so important, and I know of people that night that were carrying their children, nobody with shoes, on broken glass, and just having a bag available to grab in those situations is super important. It seems kind of silly, and once you make it, you'll probably look at it and say, oh, I don't know that I'll ever need that, but you never know when a flood may hit, or a tornado, or there be a fire, or a medical emergency where you need some of the information. So it's not always about natural disasters, but there was another situation in Chattanooga a couple years ago where one of our congregate housing facilities that has 200 people in it, the water supply went out. And so they were evacuating everyone and rehousing them. It was a water main break, so it took several days to get it fixed. And so just having something to grab that has your important items in it is super helpful and important. And it's not always weather related. So one of the activities that you guys can do as part of your church or your clubs or organizations that you're involved with is have a packing party. And what that entails is written here on this sheet of paper for you. But basically, it tells you a little bit about how to plan it, but also some of the items that you might need. If you're intending to host a party like this, please let us know, because we can send along some of those items for you to have that party. Over on the side, we've got some bags and some of the products to put in the bags. There is a pamphlet there that has an extensive list of things to put in your go bag. Obviously, in your go bag, you're going to want like your own pair of shoes, your own clothes, your own medicine, things like that. So these are just a couple things to help get you started and put that idea in your mind that you need to build your own bag and have your loved ones do the same thing as well. If you have questions about this, if you get home and you really want to do this, but you're not quite sure how to get started, let Stephanie know. She is the expert behind this, and she has a couple other like intergenerational event type things that she's written up as well. So at this time, I'm going to have Dr. Gensler come up and give us a closing word, and then we will do our packing.
Thank you, Dr. Wick. I guess I'm coming through. As one who has difficulty hearing, I can never tell when I'm on or not. But people have accused me sometimes of being excessively loud. And it's only when you can't hear very well, you think you're speaking very softly, and in reality, I guess I'm blowing everybody out with my my voice. So I sometimes have to apologize for that. I want to thank each of you for your presence today. And to everyone who's been live streaming this conference. It means a lot to us at Encore Ministry Foundation to be able to reach out to churches, to older adults and leaders of older adults to help make a significant impact in the life of our communities in terms of our aging members. We are so grateful to the University of Tennessee Chattanooga School of Nursing, to Dr. Wick, and to Stephanie for all their hard work. I mean, you have no idea what goes into this kind of a conference, all the plans, the preparations, and we are deeply, deeply indebted to them, and so grateful. Thank you. And Stephanie, this is for you too. I want to thank all the presenters who were here today, who took time out from their work, their ministry, their busy schedules to be here and to share their love, their wisdom, and their faith commitment to each of us. To our vendors who've been here and a blessing to share resources with us, that we might glean such valuable information from so many wonderful resources in our communities. We are grateful. I would like to have a closing word of prayer, and then you are set to leave. But also, I hope to begin. I know you received so much information today. It is a wealth of information. but so many of you are engaged in fantastic work. Kathy Burkhead at Reedland United Methodist Church. If you want to know a church that is so engaged in intentional older adult ministry, catch Kathy before you leave. Get her email address because she can be a valuable, valuable resource to you and your church. But I just thank each of you. You are a gift and you are godsend to this conference of the United Methodist Church for who you are, for the wisdom you provide, and for the gifts of your ministry. Let us pray. O gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for this day, for your Holy Spirit that has blessed and guided this conference. For everyone who has participated in this event, whether in person or live stream, we are grateful. We know that a great deal of information has been shared, and for each of us it can be overwhelming and perplexing. But we know, O God, that when we trust in you and we lean upon your wisdom and your grace, that nothing is impossible and that we can make a difference in the lives of older adults to bless our communities as well as our churches. Be with us now as we go forward, that we may serve you with all intentionality by serving older adults, their caregivers, their families, and everyone that makes a difference in the life of an older person. Thank you, O God, for giving us this opportunity. Thank you for bringing this challenge to our attention. And thank you, O God, for granting us the wisdom that we may go forward in service and in love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.